If you're not familiar with the Overwatch League, one of the LA teams, the LA Gladiators, are my favorite team. As the first season progressed, I became more and more of a fan of them and even created a Captain America inspired shield in all its purple lion glory. I'm happy with the way that shield came out, but for a new season, I wanted to aim for a new shield, one that I've been meaning to make for a long time. A fully plexiglass LED shield. This is the behind the scenes of that shield's creation. So first things first, you gotta get all the materials needed. So I ended up buying a sheet of plexiglass at Lowe's. That cost about maybe $25-$30 or so. I didn't get any special other blades. I had some razor blades at home that I was going to use. I also bought some sandpaper, and I also bought some black spray paint, but I ended up not using it, so I didn't really want to feature it here. One of the things that was difficult is that I didn't really have the right tools in order to get this working. So what I ended up having to do is actually have to piece it together by printing out 8.5 by 11s, double printing certain quadrants of the shield, and then I'm going to go ahead and piece it all together into one proper stencil. I do want to make a note that this was made with cardstock as opposed to just standard paper, and hopefully that cardstock will last a little bit stronger. It's not super thick as like other types of cardstock, but it'll do. It'll do. So let's go ahead and see this as it goes. So that was a big part of it, the fact that I couldn't print out the big piece, so this took a little bit more than I wanted it to, but I was also being very cautious, especially because my last time I used the stencil strategy. I used regular piece of paper, and with paint involved with a piece of paper, it ended up sticking to the shield itself, and I wanted to avoid it this time around. Obviously I wasn't going to be using spray paint, or at least at this point I didn't think I was going to be using spray paint, but that is what it is, so. So with the whole piece of the stencil now completed together, I was able to now figure out what I wanted to go next in terms of the shield creation. So we're getting to the part where I'm actually going to go ahead and cut the plexiglass to finally make the shape. I'm a little worried about it because I've never done this before, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I guess I'll clean up my other shield over there. So at this point, now we're kind of cutting that sheet of plexiglass that I purchased so that it's in the right sizing for what we need for the shield itself. Right here, I'm just kind of making some very simple lines so that I'll be able to measure where I need to cut. Not completely precise, just enough so that I can know where my boundary lines are. Next thing is scoring the plexiglass itself. Now you can use different types of blades. They recommended using a plexiglass blade or a glass blade. Now I didn't have any of those, and the Lowe's that I went to didn't have those in stock, so I ended up going with a regular razor blade. Now if you're going to be using a razor blade like this, I do recommend doing multiple scores of it. We're talking about maybe 10 to 20 times each side, because as you can see in this first attempt, I ended up actually breaking not on the line I wanted to, but actually around it. And that's because the scoring that I did wasn't clear enough, it wasn't thick enough, so that the perforation that I was basically creating at that point wasn't going to make the line clean enough. Guys, we're fine. You can see this little edge right here. It was good to give us a little bit of cushion. So I'm really happy about that. Whew. But now comes the hard part of cutting each of these little parts.
So in this part, I was a little bit more cautious and decided to score it a little bit more. And that's how I actually really realized that you really want to take your time with this. You want to score it as much as possible. If you can score it 20 times each side, perfect, because that's going to give you a better break in the long run once you actually attempt it. Another thing you want to do is when you're scoring each side of the plexiglass, you want to make sure it is as straight and careful as possible so that you're only going down one path. At this point, we're going to be going ahead and finding the center of the plexiglass itself and creating that circular shape. Now, first we find the center of the circle itself, and then we're going to use a little trick where we're using a piece of paper or whatever, what have you, measuring out about 10 inches, and then just making a complete circle with the marker at the 10-inch mark. And this is what's creating our sort of perfect circle. Now it's a little messed up, but it was good enough for me. Another thing too is that when I was doing this was about 1 or 2 a.m. and my Dremel tool was making the loudest sound I think known to man. So I ended up stopping for the day.
So I have the components now. It's really great, but there are some things that I'm worried about. One being, I've never tried melting plexiglass before. Hey there, little buddy. Yeah, I know. I've never tried melting plexiglass before, so I'm kind of worried about that process. I assume I'm not going to be melting it completely. And the other component to it too is the LED part, which I've never played with before. And then finally, if it's gonna even be allowed into the Blizzard Arena. Hopefully.
So a big part of when I was cutting with this, and something I want to make a very, very clear, have as much security things as possible. You want to be wearing gloves, goggles, all the shabazz, face mask, because you're dealing with really things that are going to be very harmful for you if you are not careful. Another thing too is that I did mention earlier that I was going to try to make the dome shape for the shield. I ended up dropping that because as I was testing things out, the warping wasn't going as I was hoping for. And I didn't want to use the heat gun because the first initial test that I did with it ended up breaking the piece and it became very brittle. So I was kind of wary and scared about that. So I ended up just kind of going with a straight, flat look instead. We used painter's tape to keep the stencil in place, and then I taped it to the entire shield itself, and that way we can make sure it stays completely together. And then we used a razor blade and then some sandpaper to basically outline and then fill in the rest by hand, scratching every little part of it to make that extra score that the LED will be able to show through. I started off bandwagoning both LA Valiant and LA Gladiators teams. As the season progressed, however, it felt like GLA had this underdog team energy. But not only that, it was a team that had potential, amazing potential, and I decided to lend my support for that kind of team. Being part of the LA Gladiators frontline is an exciting feeling. In Season 1, I was incredibly moved by the dedication the members had. Back then, I had no idea they even existed, but I wanted to do my part to root my team on. I dabbled before in creating cosplay props, but nothing in the same degree as the Mark I shield. I remember spending days planning and working on it, and buying each and every tool I needed to get it done, and then there was that huge final weekend push to try to get everything done before game day. It was really fun, and a memory that won't leave me for quite a while. I didn't get a chance to sit on the floor seats on my first visit, but I knew I wanted to come back. To my surprise, the GLA staff was quick to notice my prop shield and acknowledged the work that I put into it. This moment resonated with me more than I expected. It felt like the Gladiators weren't just some run-of-the-mill team, but a team that really values their fans. And I think that was the turning point where I went from just a fan to wanting to become a frontline fan. To this day, I keep fighting with myself. Is this how sports fans feel like when they're rooting for their team? I always felt it was weird. I never understood why someone would want to wear their favorite jersey on game day, or go to matches and cheer them on in a very coordinated fashion. I didn't understand that energy until I joined the front line. The ones that do dress up and cheer at the top of their lungs for their team to win. It's an incredible feeling. In fact, as Gladiator fans go, I think our energy is very infectious. There's support for the players, but there's also support for each member. It's an amazing feeling to be part of something, rooting with like-minded individuals, and delivering the chants the likes of which no other Overwatch League team has been able to replicate. I'm proud of that. Shields up, Gladiators.